Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Indy. That guy way over there, that's Jay. And we have Paul in the middle, and this is Indie Game Business. Paul is from Failbetter Games. And today we are talking about Failbetter Games and updating your indie game after its launch.
Yes, the timely question that actually came up last show about should you be planning for post-launch content if you're doing just a regular single-player game? And we said yes. And then our friend Hannah reached out and said, hey, we should do a thing about it. And I'm like, yes, let's do it today. So yeah, Paul and Hannah and the folks at Failbetter just released a massive update for Sunless Skies. And so we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be talking about why it's important that they do it, and how they do it, and all of that sort of good stuff. So Paul, welcome to the Madhouse. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Hi, yeah, it's great to be here.
All right, so we're going to start with our always first question, and we got Hannah's, answer on all this, so now it's your turn.
Uh-huh.
Tell us how you got into the industry originally, and walk us through your career and how you got to where you are now.
Wow, career. Okay. Well, I was a journalist for years. I got into the industry more or less by accident. I co-founded Failbetter with another guy. I was drawing the pictures and he was doing the words, just because I was a freelance reporter at the time, and I was bored and having a bad time, and the idea of drawing pictures for a living seemed like fun. And we never thought it would make any money. But we ended up making a browser game called Fallen London, which is kind of like mostly text with little pictures, kind of somewhere between Choose Your Own Adventure and RPG. And it kind of grew and got larger and larger, and it's bigger than War and Peace now, and still running. So, I mean, this is kind of the only industry job I've ever had. I've not sort of, gone around the sort of the AAA roundabout. But then we decided to make a move into making a PC game, because we had this big lore-filled universe, but we wanted to sort of get players into it on a more movement basis. So we went to Kickstarter and we pitched a game called Sunless Sea. Which was same universe but on an underground ocean, and you had little steam trips, basically sort of Elite with steamships. So you'd sail around in your little top-down boat, and having adventures and fighting off giant crabs and sentient icebergs, and then arriving at port and playing these stories, which were interactive fiction. And it was quite hard. It was quite grim. Survival and roguelikes were very big at the time, and we kind of leaned into that. Well, we wanted to make like a narrative roguelike. So your progress would be reset if you died, but you were playing through a sort of a long and complex story. And death was a big thing. Cannibalism was a big thing. Lose your mind, eat your crew was our tagline. And eating your crew was pretty much inevitable unless you were very good at it. So yeah, that was Sunless Sea. That did really well for us. And then we wanted to make a new game, and we didn't want to do Sunless Sea 2 because it just didn't seem to be much point. But we didn't want to go wildly out of our comfort zone. We're a very small studio. So we decided to move the setting up to the heavens, as they were called. It's a space setting, but it's not space as you would understand it from 2001 or I don't know, Babylon 5 or whatever. It's more like what the Victorians might have imagined space to be like if they were really high.
Which they were, so.
Yeah, a lot of the time. So high. So we kind of, that was our starting point. What would they have imagined it to be? So we read a lot of period science fiction. H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and C.S. Lewis, people like that. And imaginations of space before we actually landed on the moon and discovered just how boring it really was. And they had wild ideas. They had crazy stuff. H.G. Wells's moon is covered in sentient fungus and has giant farmable maggots. C.S. Lewis's astronauts tend to be naked for reasons I forget. But yeah, they had little weight belts. to keep them on the ground, but otherwise they're just letting it all hang out. It's very un-Victorian of them. And so that's the world we ended up building. It's really weird. It's sort of foggy and windy. It's space, but you can survive in it for like 15 minutes or so if you've got a nice sky suit. And there are monsters and tentacles and devils and rubbery men and all the sort of stuff we've become known for.
All right, so when you're sitting down and you're doing pre-production and design meetings, and it's like, okay, we're going to do this roguelike narrative game on the ocean, and we're going to do a roguelike narrative game in space. Who is the one in the room that keeps popping up and going, but with trains?
But with trains was Chris, I think. Very specifically. He's a train fan. We were stuck with this whole idea of how do you do Victorian spaceships, because the tech just wasn't there. And we said, well, what was the tech of the time? And the sort of the height of industry at that point was the railway network, and Isambard, Kingdom Brunel, and all that lot. So we figured that could be adapted. I mean, this is the official answer. The real answer is trains are cool, man.
They are cool.
And trains in space are just like super cool. So
trains
in space.
Yeah, I mean, once the idea had been expressed verbally, everybody was like, "Yeah, that's what we've got to do." So it just sort of grew from there, really. I mean, it could have been a lot. I think we were wise not to lean too hard into how trains actually work. If we'd given them multiple carriages and rails to ride on and everything, it would have been a very different and strange game. So they're not trains really; they're spaceships, but they look like trains.
Right. I
mean,
mean,
it's the train from Transformers.
It could have been horses in carriages. That would have been weird.
Yeah, I mean, that's really mean to the horses, though.
Yeah.
But then we'd have to have naked horses with weight belts. And so, it would get a little cumbersome. They could just have
like big round fish tanks over their head or something.
I'm making notes. This sounds great.
Right, here you go. That's your new game. Horses in space.
In fish bowls. Yeah, okay.
All right, so the game launched months ago, and I know this because we had Hannah on the show then to talk about the community management and how she attacked that whole side of the launch and all of that kind of good stuff. But
yeah,
walk us through, what's in the update. Why is it important for developers to start planning for this early on and have this ongoing content? And then, walk us through what you've got new in the game itself.
And while we're doing that, I'm just going to pull the game up and play a little bit.
Yeah, let's see some.
I've got
lots of reasons.
Super top secret saves here that somebody gave me.
I think we put you in Albion so you can see the new reason.
No fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the first time I've seen your face, and I thought I was winning the beard contest, but I'm not.
It's the purple.
But you do know now that as long as you can outgrow him, you're good, because he's at max length. Right.
Yeah, but there's the whole color thing. I mean, I can't compete with that. What was I talking about? Yeah, updates. Well, first of all, I mean, no game is ever done. And there's always more you want to put in. And also, you tend to learn how to make a game while you're making it. I mean, if you're making a game you've made 10 times before, like part of a franchise, it's different. But each of the games we've made has been a sort of a step up in complexity and design and tech than the one we've made before. So over the course of creating it, we get to like 3/4 of the way through the game, and we're like, oh, okay, now we understand how to make this thing. But then by that time, you've made 3/4 of it, so you're always going back and going, oh, can we adjust this? And I mean, quite late in development, we went back to the first major region and just redesigned the whole thing with the lessons that we'd learned from later stuff, and that proved to be worth it, although it made things a bit tight. So that was part of it. We wanted to improve things, we wanted to add things. There were things we hadn't had time to put in. But a lot of it, I think, is about the nature of the game community from the start, because this was a Kickstarted game. It was in early access for like a year and a half. So we have a big community of people who've been really, really helping us out, who've been giving us, feedback and encouragement, who've been playing new builds and sending us, bug reports. And these people are really invested in the stuff we make, which is, really lovely and humbling. And because the game was successful, it gives us a bit of a runway. So the first thing we wanted to do was say, here is more. Here are some improvements. Here are things that you've been asking us for. And here are some of the ideas that we really wanted to get and hadn't had time. So yeah, part of it's about giving back, cliche as that might sound. And it's it's just the production of games has changed so much in the last 10 years. The idea of a game, even a single player one like this one, being released and then everybody just walking away, like it's the end of a theater show or something, you rehearse the next one. It doesn't really work like that anymore because there's a conversation around it. You look at No Man's Sky, extraordinary the sort of the depth of commitment they've had to update that game and change it and bring it around to the vision they wanted to have it for in the first place. And that's, it's paid off for them. I don't think they've even done like paid DLC. But they still, every time they do an update, it shoots back to the top of the charts, and everyone's talking about it. And so I think it's important from that point of view as well. It's important as developers to show that we're committed to the thing we do, and it's fun. We're not done making this thing. So many things I want to add to it. So many things.
So how often do you plan on releasing new content?
I couldn't say exactly. It's kind of a done when it's done thing. I think we'll certainly do another major update, another free one. And we're going to keep assessing as we go. We very much like to do like a large scale paid expansion as well. Not perhaps as large as the last one we did because that was insane, but still, still hefty. Not like horse armor. We're talking, large changes, new areas, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's, people are playing it, people are liking it. We want to keep making it for now.
So I know, and it's true because the update just went live yesterday. But
yeah,
how much do you expect, or how much have you seen already? Because obviously Steam does these updates automatically. How much do you forecast seeing in upticks in players coming back? And do you have any thoughts or insights or experience on how many new people this might bring to the game?
I don't know. I think this one's quite focused on improving it for existing players. In another update, we might push it further on the new player angle, but a lot of this is about addressing some of the sort of perceived problems with the game, as well as adding new content. We wanted to this update's focused very much on making the moment-to-moment experience of traveling around in space, like you can see happening there, just more interesting. So it's kind of a sort of mid-gamey update in some ways. The biggest sort of single change is that the entire second region has been designed. Sorry, my hands in front of my face. So that's a region you wouldn't immediately see if you picked up the game for the first time.
So, all right, I've been playing the game for the first time, over the last week or so. So you start in I forget what it's called.
The Reach.
The Reach, yeah.
Green one.
And then there's that one teleport that goes to the ocean area. But how do you get to Albion? Not that I'm asking because I have to get something to London and I don't know where Albion is at all. But so would you say it's the second area? How is it? How do you get there from the first area for new players?
You have to find a thing called a transit relay, which is like a Victorian Stargate, basically, which has this amazing little animation with sort of jiggly lines and stuff. And you have to pay a toll, I think, although it's fairly light. And then it'll just dump you there. So it's kind of, when I say second region, it's sort of the second region in terms of difficulty, I guess. You can basically visit any of them at any time once you've amassed a bit of cash and some resources, but it's not really recommended. It's like, it's the Dark Souls thing of, do you turn left or right? You turn right and you get completely destroyed by skeletons. So you can, for instance, go to Eleutheria, the third region, but if you go there in your starter ship, you're going to have a hard time. And if you go to the Blue Kingdom in your starter ship, then, well, I just wouldn't, really.
Well, see, that's good to know. I haven't tried it yet, but, So, for players that have played a lot, are there changes to in-game? Are there changes to characters that they've already met? How has the game evolved with this
Loads. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of new content. So we've got a whole bunch of things. One of the major sort of content changes is we've added a bunch of stories about the gods of the sky, which are these sort of three entities that you can encounter in various ways on your vessel. So there's the waste waif, which is the sort of frozen child god, and the storm that speaks, and the burrower below, which are these sort of weird sort of Lovecraftian creatures who can have some influence on your vessel, and can do terrible things to you, and usually do terrible things to you. Very occasionally they'll be nice to you, but we're generally not about nice things happening to players. That's just not our thing. We like to failure and distress and unhappiness is just generally more interesting in games for us. So it's usually about how long it will last before you have to sort of munch on the femur of your final crew member. So we've got the god stuff. We've got a form of critical damage, I guess you'd say. It's not like, oh, bang, you scored a crit, but if you are in a fight, you might find after that fight is over, you'll get a story pop up saying you've got like a shell lodged in your hull, and it hasn't exploded yet, and you better go and port and sort it out. And some of our nastier beasties might have weird effects on you if you have an unsuccessful fight with them. So you might find that you have an unwelcome visitor at some point. So we got that. We have a thing called officer secondments, which is really fun. We have you can collect officers on your travels. They're kind of like a party. So you have a first officer, and you have a quartermaster, and so on. And they all have stories. And we've added a thing where you can now, in some cases, you can dump them off and let them get on with the job and come back and see them later.
Just kind of like how I dumped the princess off and she just opened a salon or whatever she opened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or, I mean, I don't hope this isn't giving too much away, but one of the officers you can recruit in the game is actually your aunt, who is a formidable lady, very inconvenient, but makes a mean scone. And you can drop her off, I think, at the floating parliament, which is our equivalent of the regular parliament. Where she discovers that she was in fact a lord once upon a time, or a lady, I suppose. So she can go off and influence government there. So there's lots of those. What else? I mean, the visual update obviously is massive, and we've changed the layout of the region as well, not just the visuals. So there's a lot more like level design going on than there was, because it was a very open space. The first region is very tight. It's very enclosed and oppressive, and it was meant to be that way. But then you got to Albion, and it was very, very wide open, and we felt it was a bit too wide open, and we wanted to curate that space a bit more. So it's not as enclosed as the first region, but there's more of a sense of navigation.
So how long have you all been planning on this content patch? And along with that, like you said, games are never done now, but at the same time, at some point you have to ship. So when you're going through the process, how did y'all decide where to draw the line and then where to start working on the next round?
Well, like everything else, we had a big old spreadsheet.
Google Docs.
And, and there was a line. And stuff above that line would make it in before ship, and some stuff below that line was, well, okay, we'll try and do that later. And everything that was essential to make the game, what we wanted it to be, was above the line, and part of the reason we came in a few months late was we wanted to get everything above the line. We wanted to get it right. But then additional fun stuff, the Gods of the Sky, sending your officers off, critical damage, other things that I'm not going to tell you about. These are things that were not, essential to the vision of the game, but would add a lot of fun. And then we added stuff, because obviously the first thing you do when you put the game out, you've had people playing it in early access, but suddenly you have 100 times more beta testers than you had before, as it were. And they're finding stuff you haven't found. They're finding stuff that you have found but you haven't been able to do anything about. And they're making, they're playing the game just for hours and hours and hours and discovering, new things and new ideas. And areas where it's strong and areas where it's weak. And so obviously we spend a lot of time listening to that and reading the forums and talking to people. So, a lot of the update content is focused on, I guess it's a split between focusing on what we consider to be the issues of the game as it stands, and with stuff that we just really want to do and we think sounds cool.
So in identifying those areas, is it strictly a listening to the community and forums and Discord and all of that, or are there analytics packages that you all use to help find, okay, well, nobody's buying this upgrade, and people aren't seeming to find this dot? How do you go about identifying those areas?
We're quite old-fashioned about it. I think we tend to listen and read comments, and we do a lot of QA, and we pay close attention to the bug reports that come up again and again. We don't do much in the way of analytics at the moment. Excuse me. Sorry. But what we do is we watch a lot of streams, because that is just a great way of telling what people like and what they don't. And what they immediately grasp and what they don't, which is a really important thing, particularly as you're sort of getting to the end of early access and starting to think about tutorials and so on. It's there's like 11 of us, I think. So we don't have a huge sort of analytics package, and we're not sort of going on metrics and things. We're watching the game on streams. We're reading the forums. We're reading the comments. We're reading the bug posts. And we're sitting down and saying, okay, well, so-and-so said this.
See, if we always talk about how, streaming and, the influencers have changed the marketing side of the industry, and how everything is much less focused on, making sure that you have a review in whatever magazine or website it is. Yeah. But the thing that a lot of people don't catch up on is exactly what you just said. It's using streamers and Twitch and YouTube as a way of basically focus testing, which, for years we paid consulting firms and focus testing experts, or, I remember back 10 years ago, we would sit down and have a focus tester play a game, and they had a video on there, and we were live streaming that video to our office in North Carolina, and the publisher's office in Seattle, and the developer's office in Kiev. And we're watching for the things that you just mentioned that you can see with a streamer now. And so it's fascinating to me that it has opened up. Focus testing is so important, but indie teams haven't been able to do it for years outside of friends and family or local folks or things like that. And now there's a wonderful focus testing resource right here in front of all of us.
Yeah, and you've got also, not just the streamer playing it, but the audience reaction, and you can see what they're into and what they're not. It can be agonizing just in the way that focus testing is agonizing.
Or reading reviews can be agonizing.
Yeah, an example. This actually came up at a show we went to, rather than stream, but it's the same sort of principle. Before we did the tutorial really late, because you do. And before that, we had a sort of non-tutorial tutorial, which was just a page of text. It just said, okay, so here is what your guns do, here is how you control, here are how the stories work. These are your stats and so on and so forth. And it just sat there in the corner of the screen for you to, theoretically for you to consult occasionally as you travel through the stars. And what we found was that we were sitting at this game show, and somebody would sit down at the game and they would look at this tutorial and they go, "Oh, okay," and then they spend the next 15 minutes just reading it, point by point, while their ship stayed in the dock, and we're just like, "Oh my god, this is like, this is not the experience you're supposed to be having." We always knew we were going to get rid of that, so that was not so serious. But we didn't expect people to be so, so obedient. I guess it's like, "Oh, here's a tutorial. Please ignore it." No, I will read the whole thing. I want to understand this game before I play it.
That's my college roommate's way of playing games. I'm the other guy. I'm the. What do you mean? How do you fire? It's in the tutorial, Jay. Well, I skipped all that shit. I'm just, I'm plowing ahead and playing the game first.
And fair enough, and the game should allow for that. If a game requires you to pay close attention to all its tutorializing, then you're going to have players who don't. And if they have a lousy time, then I think that's on the game.
So Basterni has a question. This is, and Hannah's going to chime in as well. Has streaming made internal alpha and beta testing help cut the pains and costs of internal testing enough to affect the budgets positively as a whole?
Well, I think Hannah's answering that by the look of it. So, I could read out what you're saying. It's helped the writers. Yeah, that's true. Chris,
hey, Bass, how's it going? I was just saying hi.
Hey, how you doing over there? I've got two screens here, and you're still alive, so that's good.
I'm just trying to kill
Indy
myself.
has trouble parking. That's what I've been watching.
You're fat and old. That's funny.
They gave you the nicest ship in the save. You've got the Moloch, which is the devil-designed locomotive.
I already killed somebody.
All right, so I'm gonna follow up on the question. So Hannah says it's most usefully it's helped the writers a lot.
Yeah.
So how do you handle internal alpha beta testing with streaming? Do you give early access to streamers, or how do you handle that internally? And I'm going to let you answer while my assistant is now at the window wanting to come in.
Yeah, I mean, we have relationships with a couple of streamers who sort of play our stuff pretty regularly, and obviously we're always open to lots of streamers playing at the launch. Because the game's early access, it's available to be streamed. Basically, we can't actually, even if we wanted to, we can't stop people streaming a game if they can buy it on Steam.
Right.
So we're just always grateful to see somebody going, "Oh, I'm streaming." I didn't, honestly, for the longest time, I didn't understand streaming. I get it now, but I'm really, really old.
Do you watch sports?
No, never.
Well, people that watch sports, right?
I'm aware that sports are things that are watched.
Yeah, so it's that's basically watching people play a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it now. I do.
Yeah.
It took me a while to understand it, but I suddenly found that I was sort of enthralled by watching these incredibly sort of skilled playthroughs of games.
Or unskilled, which would be my forte.
I have a From weakness, so I'm always happy to watch crazy Bloodborne playthroughs or whatever.
You did.
And it's such a long form thing, which I think people weren't previously ready for. Where the sort of the unit of entertainment for watching was like the film. It was 2 hours and you're done. Whereas everybody is, binge watching everything now. So the idea of sitting down for 6 hours to watch something is just not so alien anymore, I guess.
All right, so along with that, and I don't know if Chris is in chat or not, but this is very much a narrative question here, and it's something that comes up a lot with narrative and fairly linear games. And this isn't strictly a linear game, but there's a bit of linearity into it.
Uh-huh.
How does the streaming affect the narrative? I mean, are you concerned that stories are getting told and spoiled, for lack of a better reason, through streams, or is that not so much an issue?
I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't, comma, no. No, I don't think so, because there's just so much of it. If we I mean, if we have a streamer getting to late game, like while we're still in early access, we might sort of politely ask if they could, go easy on the massive spoilers. But honestly, there's so much content here, and how streamers react to text in particular is really interesting. And not every streamer is going to sit there and read it, which is, fair enough. Some of them really get into it. Cody, Excessive Sanity, who's streamed us before, he likes to do the voices.
Cool.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he'll sail around and he'll do the exploring and the fighting, survival. But then he'll get to a story and he'll be like, right, okay, I'm going to read this to you in this wonderful mellifluous, audiobook voice. And it sort of turns into an ASMR channel. People love it, So that's great. I think I'm basically fine with the spoiler thing. I think, the proportion of people who are watching the stream at the time, all the way, who are going to be spoiled, intentionally, is not something to worry about. I think if people are very concerned about spoilers, they'll turn it off. Fair enough. I mean, it's weird doing a game in early access that is narrative, full stop. And it's not a problem we've entirely solved, I don't think. I think, early access games tend to be systemic. They tend to be about sort of sandbox systems and emergent gameplay and so on.
Well, I mean, and I don't know that you can solve it, because what we see is, situations like with Atlas and Persona 5, and they just basically ostracize a large amount of the viewers by saying, okay, you can't stream more than like 5 hours of this, and they made such a big deal about it that it backfired on them. And to be fair, that's a much more linear game than this is, because Hannah's got a point. She said there's 800,000 words of stories in the game, and there's so many different ways to go through it that each playthrough is unique. And that's one of the things that I like about the game. It's, when you die, you're not necessarily starting over. You're starting as the next captain of that ship.
Yeah, we did as much as we could with that. And we'd like, well, I mean, I'd like to do more with that, honestly. It was a step forward from Sun to Sea, where when you died, your progress was basically reset. You could carry on a legacy to an ex-captain, which would give you some items and would help you out the next time, but the stories all basically started from the beginning again. So, I mean, Skies, some do, but quite a lot don't. So, and for instance, if you've been through an officer story and they've evolved into a new officer, that new officer will be with you in the next captain. And there are some stories that can only be played by a legacy of captains rather than just a singular one. There's the stories that go down through a family. The 100,000 words thing is, I mean, it's a big impressive number. I think what it misses is that I think people think of a story game as story beat 1, story beat 2, story beat 3, in a linear sequence. That's not how we do stuff at all. These stories are all broken up into sort of discrete chunks, little narrative chunks, and it's curated to an extent, but you can basically tackle a lot of it in any order you like. So actually what happens is the story is told by the player between those chunks. So they arrive at a port, they do a thing, they go and they sail off and they think about that, and then they do a second thing. And the story is what happens in their minds between those two chunks. It's like how the story is the edit in the film. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm entranced by the art. That's the next question I was going to go to, because how, and I'm not an artist for God. I mean, I can draw stick people that sometimes look like stick people, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah.
How did you go about creating all of these different layers? How many layers? I mean, because right there where India is, I can see like 5 or 6 levels of stuff. How do you go about doing that?
I mean, it just takes ages.
It's kind of like writing 800 words.
We don't have clever. It just takes forever. I mean, there is, we try. I mean, there's a degree of repetition, but we try and keep stuff on the layer closest to the player, as distinct as possible, as recognizable as possible. And then obviously as you descend through the mist, things could be a little vaguer. Although there are some surprises down there. We occasionally like to put stuff down in the lower layers that people don't expect. You're right, there's about 5 or 6 layers there, and there's one of those layers is a skybox, which is also multi-layered, so that gives the whole sense of depth. It was fun to do. I mean, when we did Sun the Sea is like one layer. It's the sea. And we started doing this one, like, hey, let's do Parallax, that'll be fun. A few months later, we're like, oh, okay, we have to build 5 times as much game this time. So yeah,
we're not in crunch. Just the art team is in crunch.
I mean, art team. There's 2 of us. There was 1 of us for Sky. Now for Sea. Now there's 2 of us. So yeah, it was a lot of work.
So are there any? And I remember because I was fortunate enough. This is going to show how old I am and how long I've been doing this. But when EVE Online was about to launch, one of our clients was Simon & Schuster, and Simon & Schuster is the ones that ended up doing the physical distribution here in the U.S. when it launched. But they called me up to New York to say, we need somebody to come in here and sit and make sure this game isn't completely trash. And I loved it. But one of the things that they mentioned, and it stuck with me all these years, is when they started getting around to the nebulas and all of these fascinating, colorful parts of space, that was done on a petri dish with stuff out of the refrigerator, jelly and butter and mayonnaise or whatever, and smeared together to create these.
Fantastic. I love that old school stuff.
Is there any of that in this? I mean, any tricks or...
I mean, more from the inspiration of the actual... I spent a lot of time looking at cloud tanks. Do you remember, this was a big effect in the 80s. Things like Close Encounters and Poltergeist have these amazing cloud tank effects, which are, giant sort of revolving cloudscapes, and they're just done by dripping ink into an aquarium, and filming it in slow motion, and it's just such a lovely old school effect, and we wanted to try and reproduce that.
Is any of this stuff in 3D or is it all just 2D?
It's all 2D. There's a couple of tiny bits of 3D. Just for specific effects, but most of it is 2D. It's an orthographic camera. It isn't even they're not even 3D separated. They're all actually, as far as the camera is concerned, on the same layer. There's just maths doing the parallax, which makes it quite hard to build. But so I don't know. Maybe we should do it in 3D next time. But I think the effect is nice.
Then you're going to have people diving through wanting to dive through to the next layer and
then
all of that.
Then you're going to have to be like, well, this stuff needs to rotate.
Yeah.
And then so what direction does this stuff need to rotate? And is it rotating randomly? Is it?
I mean, we're just. We might do it one day. We're just not set up for it at the moment. We've got a pretty good 2D pipeline.
Yeah.
We don't have any kind of 3D pipeline really. So I'm not. So I mean, I've been Toby's our artist. Toby and I have been looking at 2D games that use 3D lately, and that use it beautifully. Hollow Knight, for instance, is very much a 2D game, but it's actually set up on a 3D plane. So if you swing the camera around, which you can't do in the but it has this appearance of an old school theatre set, like a sort of Tim Burton pantomime or something. And you can see all these little bits of set dressing going back layer by layer. It's just a beautiful thing, and probably a lot easier to make. So maybe we'd look at that next time. You're coming up on one of our big 3D, our big parallax set pieces actually. That's the Clockwork Sun there.
Yeah.
If you can actually go into the middle of it without dying, I think. So you could get an idea of what we do when we really go nuts with the parallax.
All right, let's go in the middle.
Yeah, do it. I don't think anything nasty will happen to you. I might
smack. I just feel to get smacked around.
Oh yeah, flying into a sun is always safe.
How bad could it be? So yeah, a lot going on in this one. There's a lot of layers, and I think right at the center of it, that is like a flipbook animation. That's a frame animation. So yeah, it took a long time to make that one. Toby made that. It's amazing. You seem to be alive, although I'm going to guess your terror's going up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm blinking red.
Flying into a sun and all that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's put Hannah on the spot real quick.
Sure.
How are you going out and aside from obviously your Steam page, which says, hey, there's an update and here's everything on there, how are you getting the word out to fans, to new fans, to the community in general, not only to inform your existing players that there's all this new cool stuff, but also tell the people who haven't bought it yet that hey, look, here's this, we're still working on this. This is some kind of game we've just abandoned. So how are you approaching that aspect of it?
A robust outreach system. Is that Google Docs?
We're going to make her type a whole lot of stuff now.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets.
Yeah, spreadsheets.
Yeah.
The secret development tool. Seriously. Everything is spreadsheets.
She told me that. All right, is that an email? All right, so Hannah, is that of influencers and media, or is that players, or both?
The 400k is players, I think, but we have press lists and influencer lists as well. Oh no! Oh yeah, 400. I was going to say 400k press. That would be impressive. I'm not sure there are 400k press.
That's everybody. That's you just hit literally everybody. That's
It's Woodward and Bernstein on down.
She told me last week that she had a community outreach ecosystem, which I thought was like one of the most unique words to describe it possible.
Oh, I like the sound of that. I'm not 100% sure what it means. I'd have to ask. Sorry.
So I mean, but Hannah, frankly, I mean, to be blunt, you're spending a lot of time going and doing outreach, just like you did with the original game. You're doing it all over again for the content update.
Yeah, and because the community's a really big deal, and I mean, it makes it sound like, oh, look, we're so nice to our community, but it's good for us, I mean, if they're engaged, then they're interested in our game, and they're telling other people about our games, and they're playing them and telling us what's wrong with them and what's right with them. So, and every time somebody new picks up the game and likes it and pops onto a Discord or a forum and says, oh, hey, what's going on? How do I defeat this ridiculous monster? Then that's another member of the community, and they have a whole. It's quite nice. A lot of new people have come to play Skies who've never heard of us before, and that's cool for them because if they're into the lore and the world behind it, there is a giant backlog of stuff for them to discover. They can go back and they can play Sun the Sea, and there's a lot there, and they can London and just a ludicrous amount there. So you can sort of discover this whole story backwards. We do quite a lot of secret revealing in Sun the Skies. But some of the things that are like a given in Skies were some of the greatest mysteries in Fallen London. So you can sort of trace back how it all works. There's levels and levels of secrets.
Yes, a definite big shout out to all of our friends on Steam who are watching this. Hannah, why don't you pop up the Discords that you mentioned so folks that are seeing it can go and join in and all that kind of good stuff too.
Well,
and I had
Steve's
another
not going to be
question.
able to see our Twitch chat.
Well, Twitch can see our Twitch chat.
Yeah.
We should have been reading it out for the Steam. They'll just have mysterious silences every now and then.
Oh no! That's something, and we can do that at the same time too. This is where I always get distracted when I'm reading and I'm not doing these things. So what Hannah said, for those of you who can't see what she's saying, is they do have a really deep, robust outreach system. Lots of spreadsheets. There's an email list of 400,000 players that they go out to, and then they also follow up with the forums on Steam and their own forums. There's 2 Discords and a press list of influencers that's 400 deep on that side too. So one of the things that we're doing is this, like, I want to call it a special episode, but it's not. This is the stuff we love talking about anyway. So they're taking our Twitch stream and it's going to be on their Steam page. So when players go and look at it, there's this video already there and talking about it. So, but the point that she makes that I really want to call out is marketing happens all the time, and it's the same with business, and it's the same, what we preach here constantly. It's, you can't take your foot off the pedal, whether you're talking to your community or you're, making sure that you've got new revenue coming in. So it's like they say in Armageddon, there's pretty much a room of people just thinking shit up all the time. And do you have that room over there?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're pretty evangelical about this, I think, because it's a truism that indie games development doesn't have marketing, or that you finished your game and you go, oh, how do I market it? That's less true than it used to be, but thinking about it right from the
it's
off.
Still very very true.
Yeah, there's so many devs that are just like, we made this game and now we want to market it. How do we do that?
Yeah,
after it's released on Steam.
It's a crueler world out there now, on Steam especially. With like 200 games getting released a week, and you can't rely on just shouting about it the week of release. Most of the time, you can't even rely on it just being good. You've got to be out there, and particularly if you do. I mean, it's unusual for us because again, Kickstarter early access. We've been talking to the players from the day we started. We built the first scene in Unity. But even if you're not doing that, even if you're even if you're top secret development done when it's done, ID software style, id Software, ID I don't know. You need to be telling people about what's coming, and getting them interested, and just standing out from the crowd. Really
build that hype.
And I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Hype kind of sounds pejorative. It kind of sounds down. I think a lot of it for us is just about just talking to people and being honest and saying, look, this is what's coming. This is where we're having problems. What do you think about this? And taking that on board. If you have an open relationship with your community, it's like any relationship. If you're sort of honest and as open as you can be, then you get much better results, I think.
Right. And standing out from the crowd, that is like a huge, huge, huge thing. And people are like, well, how do I stand out from the crowd? And I'm like, okay, well, take 10 other things, whether it be games or Twitter accounts or your streaming channel or whatever. Take yours and line it up in the middle of 10 other ones and see if yours stands out.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like a lot of people.
It helps if you've got a game, that stands out as well, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, still, it's if you have something, it's really in the way you present it, because like you can present stuff on Twitter, line yourself up on other games that are similar and see, okay, so does my game stand out among this? Am I out of ammo?
And you kind of never know what people are going to like. I mean, you can get an idea, but there are always, you look at the Steam sort of top charts, regularly there are just surprises there. And these are things that have grown up from sort of grassroots, from a lot of it from streaming, from a streamer picking up a game and saying, oh, hey, this is fun.
Yeah.
And streamers talk to other streamers, and streamers watch other streamers. So if one is having a good time with a game, then another one. And then you have these games arriving in the charts that, the mainstream press hasn't talked about.
It's because there's so many of them.
What the hell is this? Everybody's playing it,
Yeah.
What was the house decoration game, Flipper, or no one knew that was going to be like suddenly a huge thing. But the people, people were playing it, and people were watching other people playing it. So it's a really big deal.
All right. So ever since you
the
mentioned
truck
the fact
driving
that,
ones.
Yeah.
those are huge.
I was like, I'm a truck driver in real life, and then I come home and play the game truck driving.
Or, I mean, Five Nights at Freddy's is an interesting one, I think. Part of the reason that one is successful is because it's a really good game to stream. Because it's full of, it's full of surprises. And people can get really into it and get excited and shout and scream.
Yep.
So, and that means that stuff gets watched.
So you mentioned a minute ago that it's not just good enough to be good. And that's when that's why I've been staring so intently at my screen. I just saw an article on Game Industry Biz. I linked it in Twitch chat, and I know our friends on Steam can't see it, but it's there. They called up and they were talking to Rami Ismail about, the conversation that he had, in a panel at one of the shows with Epic, and David Seltzer says the cream always rises to the top at the end of the day. If you make a crappy game, then there are places where you can put crappy games. And Rami challenges that from the good game standpoint. And it's something that I've always agreed in and I've always preached. And I've got friends of mine who, say, no, you're wrong. A good game will always sell, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
And he says, people ask, well, isn't that a meritocracy? And he says, no, it means the right person with a good game was in the right place at the right time with the right resources. They say only the good games rise to the top, and the games that rise to the top tend to be good, but it doesn't mean a game that's good will automatically rise to the top. It's a combination of factors. And that is absolutely true. You've got to, even when you're building on the success of a game like this, you've still got to make sure that you're, talking to your fans and engaging the streamers and making sure that, like your big Steam update had, you've got the things in there that are clear to the player on, this is why I should come back. This is why I should start playing again. You can't make a great game and then, like Indy said, and it's not an exaggeration, I get about a request a month like this where someone comes to me and says, hey, we've got our game and we're launching next week. What do we do about marketing? And I'm like, I don't know how to help you.
Go back in time about 6 months.
Yeah.
Find a DeLorean, put a flux capacitor in it, and let's talk about your marketing plan. You have to constantly be building this stuff and constantly be working on it. It's as important as the actual design of the game. And a lot of companies don't realize that.
I mean, a lot of people buy into the idea that, the game that took a solo developer 5 years will be an enormous success. But there's confirmation bias there because those are the only ones you hear about.
Yes.
The guys you're not hearing about who spent 5 years making a game that's genuinely brilliant that sold 3 copies, and they're now working in a photocopier factory or whatever. Those are the majority, but they're not part of the story because they don't get the attention because no one's playing them.
And there's too many things out there being released now that you can't count on being found.
Yeah.
Indy, you have the most unique combat strategy I have ever seen.
Well, I can't shoot. I killed one of them.
Are you out of bullets?
I'm out of everything. My fuel's going down. This is it. I'm gonna die.
Oh, okay. I've lost the stream. Where have you gone?
But I killed one ship. I killed the big one.
I didn't know you could run out of weapons. Slam him into the.
I'm trying.
Yeah. I didn't know you could run out of bullets.
Yeah, I don't have any. I guess I don't have a gun because it's not shooting.
You ought to have a gun. I've lost you. I can't. Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah, see, I can't shoot.
Maybe Hannah can help you. I can't actually see the stream. I wonder if our internet's being troublesome.
Flee, run, Indy, run.
Yeah.
No,
running is valid. Really, running is okay.
No, I'm gonna kill this guy.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
Oh, there you go. I got you back.
The crew is starving.
Now you can eat them.
Yeah, keep at it. You should be able to eat a couple of them. They will eventually, object to that.
I don't care. I'm evil. I like to play games evil, so a rupture. I died.
Oh, okay.
So
were you playing on Merciful, or are you now starting a new?
Oh no,
legacy?
I was just. I don't know. I was on easy.
So, Paul, what's your favorite part about all the new content?
I mean, I got to say the pictures, haven't I? Because
you're the art guy.
The art guy. I'm quietly excited about some small tweaks we've made to the survival stuff. just to make it a little bit more intense. So we have the stat in the game, which is terror. And as that goes up, increasingly bad things start to happen to you. So this is not like a big frontline feature change, but we've tweaked the numbers a bit. Because a lot of the soul of the game is in the idea of you might die, but you generate a really good anecdote. So, you're limping back to port with 1 barrel of fuel, 2 remaining members of crew, and you're starting to have these increasingly horrifying nightmares because your terror is so high. And your nightmares mean that you forget to feed the crew, or you lose some supplies, or you have to make an offering to one of the gods of the sky to try and survive, which makes you terrorize more, and so on. And you eventually, you descend into a spiral of horror, and then you die. But by the time you die, you've got a story. And that's the sweet spot where we operate, I think.
I jettisoned some of my meager supplies at one point because of
don't do that.
Yeah, see, I can't shoot.
It's like, oh, you weren't reading the columns right. It's like, well, I shouldn't be spreadsheeting this anyway. I'm the captain of my space train.
It does look like you actually don't have a gun equipped. I wonder, you might want to pop back to port and sort of stick one in a slot so you can shoot people. Anyway, yeah. So, we've tweaked the terror a bit, and we're curious. It's a very delicate balance. So we're keeping an eye on players and seeing how they do with it. Because we don't want everybody just suddenly descending immediately into madness, in the first 5 minutes of the game. But at the same time, we don't want them to be sort of chugging along merrily without a care in the world. We want them on the cusp, basically, just clinging to their sanity.
Because insanity is just a state of mind, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's true. You are going to die, but it's fun when you die. It's not like it's, oh my God, I have to start all over and do all of this stuff, from scratch again. It's okay. Well, that was a little messed up, and now I'm gonna, change it up and try something different. So,
and it's about extending the moment a little bit. So, like when you're starving, the game doesn't just say, "Oh, hey, you starved to death. Try again."
Oh yeah. By the way, you're dead.
It says, "Well, you've got a rabbit on board. You could eat that." Or you run out of fuel. Well, you've got some cargo that you spent a huge amount of money on. Maybe you could burn that, or you could perhaps sacrifice a member of your crew, or set fire to a member of your crew. That might get you through the sky a little bit longer. But of course, all these choices just sort of multiply into a really bad tale. You can pull yourself out of the spiral if you're careful, but it's difficult.
I have no idea how to put on a weapon.
Are there, we're closing in on time here. Are there any questions that the folks out there have? If you do, chime in, let us know. It's fantastic. We talk constantly about how you have to keep putting out content, and we've had the Trisay brothers on, and let me look at what level of content they're up to. Let me cheat and go to the Steam store, but they've done like hundreds of updates since they launched.
Yeah.
And so it's.
Sorry, which game was that?
Star Traders Frontiers.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
But it is one of those things that, again, you can't simply release a game as a developer and then go, okay, now we're going to go do the other one. Go do another one. You have to keep these things going, and part of the reason you have to do that is because that long tail of sales that we used to have 5-10 years ago doesn't exist anymore, because there's so much new stuff constantly turning out, and you're constantly churning players. So you want to bring your old players back to build that excitement, to get new players to come in and create this self-fulfilling wheel.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The other thing is that a lot of players, because there's so much content now, because there's so many games, they'll look at what's new on the Steam page and they'll go, okay, I'll wish list that, and then when it's on sale, maybe I'll get it. Or when the reviews are out, maybe I'll get it. When they've had a year to patch it, maybe I'll get it, whatever. So there are a lot of people out there who want to play your game, but haven't bought it yet because they were playing something else, or because they're just waiting. So it's kind of like an extension of early access in a way. Some people like to jump in immediately, excuse me, and some people want to wait for release day. So every time you say, okay, we've added this, that, and the other, more people are going to be like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to give this a go.
And that's a good point too, because you can't dismiss the beauty of the Steam wish list. And this is something that when we look at Discord Store and Epic Store and all of these other stores that are popping up, they don't have that feature in there yet, but it's in many ways, highly underrated feature of Steam, because every time you do an update, everybody on that wish list gets an email.
Yeah.
And that is absolute 100% free marketing. And it's key.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's very useful. I mean, the ratio between the people who wishlist the game and the people who buy your game is large, the difference. But it's a very good idea of who's interested and who's aware, which is the first thing, obviously. It's such a treat to get new stuff. I mean, I've got a big Steam library, and whenever it's like, oh, Company of Heroes has done this, or there's a new mode in Slay the Spire, I'm like, yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah.
Great. I didn't expect this. This is a treat. I paid my money. I played the game. I thought I was done, but you just made more. That's fantastic. I love you.
So what sort of ratio, if you know off the top of your head, what kind of ratio do you see in terms of people who wish list versus people who actually purchase the game?
I don't have it on the top of my head. I'm really sorry, but it would be, it would be low as a general sort of.
Well, I mean, I remember back in the day that we said it was anywhere between 3 to 5% of people who looked at something actually bought it, or who picked up the demo actually converted it to the real. I mean, is that the level of low that we're looking at?
Yeah, generally. I mean, it varies from game to game. Some will go higher, some will be like 10% or whatever. But it's very variable. I'm quietly slacking somebody to see if they can tell me.
No, it's interesting because that metric has not changed that much over the years, and it goes back to when we used to do, the 1 hour demo of a casual game on Big Fish, and then the people that bought it. I mean, we knew if we got 100,000 downloads, we were going to get somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 sales. And then, we move over to the free-to-play model, and you see the ratio of people who download and play a game versus the people that actually pay for something in the game is still in that 3 to 5 range. And so it's different business models, different platforms, different types of games, but that ratio doesn't fluctuate that much.
Yeah. I mean, free-to-play, you also have whales, which is a weird concept which skews everything. I mean, we Fallen London technically is a free-to-play game, but we don't sort of do trad free-to-play models. We're very polite and very generous. We don't like gouging people. We have a subscription model. So I mean, you can pay. It's an action-based system. You can pay a tiny amount for extra actions if you want to, and then we have premium stories every month. That if you pay a subscription, you get an extra story, which is always done in depth, and so it's a nice, like a magazine sub. It's a much more polite way of doing things.
Yeah, it's like a battle pass, and it's the subscription model has been around for a while, and people have been trying to figure out how to do it right. And then all of a sudden Fortnite does it, and then everyone turns around and goes, "Oh, we should do subscription model." It's like, well, we've been doing subscription model for a long time. They just named it different, and that was, so
people went into it, and then they were. Hannah's just messaged me to tell me that the new one to watch is publisher page follows, apparently. So that's hot from the marketing horses. So, because Steam, you can do your publisher page now. So I guess that's people who are invested in you, as a company as well as just playing your game.
I didn't know you could do that.
It's new. I mean, Steam. There should be a Failbetter page on Steam's that sort of gives you access to developer updates and our games and so on.
So, publishers
forever changing.
The landscape is forever changing.
Well, Well, all right. And so this is, not to get off on a whole other subject, it could take another hour and a half to talk about, but this is exactly the type of stuff that we get when we start having competition in the market. And, for all of the bitching and the moaning that gamers are doing about, XYZ got pulled from Steam and it's now on Epic, this is what it does. It creates a competition because, frankly, Steam's been able to sit back on their laurels for 10 years, 15 years. And now it's like, oh, we have to do new stuff. And you get things like this. So that's awesome.
We've got to step up our game.
It's obviously it's a healthy thing. I mean, Steam has been very good to us over the years. But I'm glad to see new storefronts appearing. And new models. I mean, streaming and subscription services are going to become a thing. Obviously, sort of platforms are multiplying, and it's what will happen next. I don't know.
I've been doing this 20 years. What happens next is something that happened 5 years ago. It's a matter of can you predict it that accurately, because everything just goes in a cycle.
Yeah, it'll be on live all over again, but the tech will this time.
Exactly.
It was Stadia now is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Paul,
that's a weird
thank
one.
you
Oh, sorry.
so much for
you're welcome.
This is awesome. We love doing
Absolute pleasure. I think Hannah's now talking about she wants to come up and do a follow-up episode about Steam publisher pages and all the crazy details there. So if you guys
this. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, look, I mean, I haven't had a chance. I didn't get a chance to watch you playing the game much. I hope you had a good time with it.
Yeah, I just rammed a bunch of stuff and explored a little bit.
Oh well, that's our two pillars right there.
I'm gonna fire it up. I've got about 20 minutes before I have to go pick up the little one, but I'm gonna fire it up and play for a little bit myself because it's a fun game. That's the bottom line. So, all right, we're gonna roll.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right,
thanks to all of our folks out there on Steam. We appreciate you watching, and you know where to find us. So that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Bye, everybody.